it's Natasha, and thank you so much for joining me today because this is a favourite. Again, I know I have a lot of favourites, but I must admit I absolutely love card making. This just gives me time to myself to do something that I love. I absolutely love it. And this one, I'm combining two of my most favourite supplies recently. Now this set here is a set from Elena Crafts, and I must admit, I think I shared in a previous video that layering stencils and things were probably not something I would reach for automatically. I'm not good at lining things up. I'm not good at like a lot of steps. I don't prefer to have lots of steps, but I must admit these are labeled literally 1, 2, and 3. I like to use the edge in my trimmer. I know that there are a million kind of tools and things out there with mats and non-stick mats and all sorts of tools that you could use, but honestly all I need is the edge with the two little edges that I can kind of butt things up against in the top left hand corner, and that means that everything is going to be lined up every single time. So I tend to choose a light, a medium, and a dark ink. For this one I am going pinks. I actually end up doing blues and yellows. Now I do this strategically because I don't have the patience to clean the stencils in between colours. So I'm going to move from pinks into blues, and then I actually go into yellows and just hope that it doesn't turn green. But honestly it didn't. It was fine. I was happy with the result. As I said, I tend to do things strategically because the less cleaning the better. We're moving on to stencil number 2, and all I do is pop it underneath. I pop it right into that corner and I'm good to go. Now because I kind of know the look-ish that I am aiming for, I'm not using all of the flowers that are in this stencil set, so I'm just doing ones that I think I might want to use. However, I am going to be ending up with lots of extras because, as I said, this tends to be a favourite at the moment, and the reason that it hasn't left my desk since it arrived is that I am really enjoying it, which is a great sign, because if I put things away often they will not resurface unless they kind of come to mind. So I am going to make the most of this one. I'm layering up the leaves. I'm doing a couple of the centers, and you'll notice that I shift things across a little bit. That's because my piece of paper is too skinny for the size of the stencil. And yes, I should have gotten another piece of paper, but I think I was probably being stubborn. So you can see I kind of end up shifting it across and lining it up with the other couple that are fit on the side. Now these blues ended up looking really nice. I actually really like the blues. Now for the dyes, as I said, I'm always hesitant about these things because I don't love lining things up. I don't consider myself very good at getting things kind of spot on even, but remembering that my head is not even over my project because I have cameras and lights and things above me, I am just able to line these up really, really quickly, and they kind of fall into place without me having to, I don't know, I seem to be having pretty good time with these, which is a huge plus for me. Now you'll see all of these flowers kind of come together. The die leaves room for the extra little pieces, but as you see when these pop out, you'll see how they kind of all come together. The leaves look gorgeous. Everything just is really easy, and I like that about this set. Now I know that she has a couple of other sets that she has designed like this one, so I know that there are others there, but this was just the one that kind of caught my attention first and foremost. I believe they are calling these daisies, but I tend to go with whichever colours I want to. Now you can see that these kind of fit up there, and then the little green stems will go underneath the other flowers, which I'll show you in a minute. Now this is my other most favourite. I was really proud of myself branching out away from flowers and away from butterflies, and this is obviously a watering can. It is the watering can set from Sunny Studios, and there are only 2 layers. However, I was so impressed with the dimension created by the 2 layers. Now admittedly it does leave a little bit of white, so it kind of almost looks like you're doing 3 layers, which I love. Now again, I was worried about lining this one up, and I was like, are we going to have to be perfect here? But you don't have to be, and I found that even when the second layer is pretty wonky, it still looks perfect. So that's my kind of stamping. So you can see I did one there in the blues, but I'm just going to show you that for this one I'm actually going to use the Morning Mist color, stamp it off once, then take the second generation of the ink and stamp that down to give me a light grey. Then I'm going to move it across to the layering option, and I'm going to use the same Morning Mist color, but I'm not stamping off this time. This is the full strength Morning Mist. So these are the VersaFine clear inks, which I think are just gorgeous. These are my favorite inks when it comes to stamping. I've talked about this in lots of videos, lots of individual videos. This is just their strength. They stamp this beautiful crystal clear perfect image. So I absolutely love the VersaFine clears for this. And in fact, I have a whole video on the VersaFine clear inks that I would recommend be first purchases, just in my personal opinion, of course. And I also have the same for Distress Oxides. I think I have 3 types of ink. So I have the Oxides, I have the VersaFine Clears, and I have some of Simon Hurley's dye ink. So I have a dye, a hybrid, and a pigment inks, and those are pretty much all I have in my stash, apart from a couple of specialty ones like a white ink and a gold ink. But apart from that, it's pretty much all I have, and I like to keep things simple. Now here are the results from this one, and I thought I would choose to use this gorgeous watering can. This is the full strength Morning Mist. Then it is the VersaFine Onyx Black stamped on top, which I love. I think this came out gorgeous. As I said, it has a lot of dimension, and I can imagine covering this in glossy accents or using some sticky embossing glue and adding some clear embossing powder, several layers of it. Maybe that's when you get your ultra thick embossing powder out, and I just can imagine how glossy and dimensional you could get this. Or my next thing is that I want to try is making this look like a gorgeous rusty old watering can. So I'm excited to try that too. But as I said, I am just really enjoying this set. I can see, for me, it feels like branching out a little bit. It feels like something a little bit different, but I think it still means I can use it with all of the things that I have in my stash already. So that's really important to me when I'm picking out a stamp set or a die set or anything like that. Now there are coordinating dies I know that are available. I just don't buy them. I'm happy to fussy cut these sorts of images, and that saves me a little bit of money for me. But as I said, there are some available. I've gone around the edges just to tidy it up with a black marker pen, and that makes my fussy cutting look better than it really is. Then to create the background and the base, I'm going to take my non-stick mat. This is just the little replacement mat from the Tim Holtz glass media mat. I don't have the glass media mat, but I do like the size of the replacement mat. Then I'm taking 2 Oxide sprays. I only have 5 in total in my whole stash, so this is 2/5 of my stash, and this is the Salvaged Patina and the Tumbled glass. Now I am spraying this onto some watercolor cardstock, and I have so much ink on there that I like to get a double print. So even though the second print is not perfect, we are going to make it work for us. And in fact, I think I end up choosing this one for the project as well. So I've got my 2 side by side. I'm adding a bit of water because at the moment these are a little bit bold for my liking, for what I was aiming for. So I'm taking a little bit of ink off this one, just dabbing here and there. And then when I added water to the right hand one, it shifted things around a little bit to make it not so obvious where the ink had transferred to. Added a little bit more, and then I have 2 backgrounds ready to go. Now of course I'm only using one for this one, and I'm going to add some texture to this background just to give it something else. Even though there is a little bit of texture already, I'm going to add this one from Altenew. This is organic linen embossing folder. I love these generic embossing folders because I feel like they just give that little bit of interest behind your projects. But this is pretty funny, and I thought I would keep this all in here, although I very nearly took it out. But I just want to show you that I changed my mind a lot during my process as well. Now I'm taking the Tumbled Glass Distress Oxide ink pad and just going over the linen, and it just brings it out a tiny little bit, all those raised bumps. You could use a darker color if you want, but I think this did the job perfectly. Now for me, this background was still too bold. So instead of starting again, I thought I would just add some white spray to this one, and I had to clear the nozzle, I must admit, but once I got it going, I was going to add a little bit more just to tone it down. Now I could have done a whitewash of like gesso or acrylic paint and watered it down and done a wash over top, but instead I just decided to add a bit of this white spray because I had it beside me, and this is something that is not going to really react with the Distress Oxides underneath. Now, don't ask me why, I'm sure there's a good reason, but this gloss spray that I'm using, it's the Glossy Acrylic Spray from Dina Wakley. It tends to stay pretty white, and when I add splashes of this on top of things that are water reactive, for example, Distress Oxides or the Simon Hurley inks, they stay crisp and white rather than picking up the ink color from behind them. So that's why I love the white. It's the only one I have in her whole line. I'm sure the rest are brilliant and good, but it's the only one I have. Now here I decided to make a little something to ground my watering can. I mean, you could call this a tablecloth, you could call this a table. I don't know what you want to call it. It was just something that is going to go in my background. Now I am just sort of freehanding this roughly. I kind of eyeball measured it, and then I'm going to do the same thing here. This is going to be the same width as the base here, although I end up cutting down my card front just a little bit, so you'll see that in just a second. Now this is where I'm going to just pop those little angles on it, and I'm just eyeballing it with my scissors. This is me measuring with my eyes, and I just cut a little corner off, and this makes it kind of look like a little tablecloth or a table or something like that. It doesn't really have to look like anything, it's just some of the background noise as well. I add some liquid glue on here. This is the Ranger Multi-Medium in the matte finish, so that if it squishes out the sides, I'm going to get no shine or anything from my glue, which is important. I've trimmed it down at this stage, so that's why I had to trim down the little pink part a little bit as well. And then we are starting to put everything together. Now I realized that I didn't have any stems for my flowers. There actually are stems in the stencil set, however, I just find it just as easy to do this. So I take a scrap piece of paper, I use some Distress Oxide finger daubers, and I use the finger daubers, I use this method because it means I don't have to get out my ink pads. I literally just use the ink that is left on my finger daubers. I don't know how many times I do this. I do it as often as I possibly can because it means I don't have to get out the full ink pads and search for the colors. I can just go to the finger daubers, and obviously I can see which colors I have on them and hope for the best and hope there's some spare ink on them. So once I have got some of my little stems, and I'm going to do my little trick to adhere this down with the 4 tabs so that I can get it nice and even. Once it's in place, I pull out the tabs, and this is attached to my 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card base. And this is just my favorite part, where everything starts to come together. Here are the bits where I mentioned you are going to put the green on the bottom of the daisies or the flowers, so they fit perfectly. So easy to put together, and I just think this makes the flowers as well. I really do love this design. I think it's really well thought out, and it's really easy for people like me, which is important. So you can have a whole lot of fun with colors. I decided to go 1 pink, 1 orangey yellow I guess, and 1 blue. I think I've used those colors in the background as well, so I think it's going to work nicely. And this is kind of, I mean, it's not the primary colors, but it nearly is, and so I think this is going to look good together. Now I did decide to put a little slit in the top of the watering can just with my craft knife, and that way the stems can be coming out of the watering can, and then you can see that it's going to be stand out really nicely from that gorgeous background. Now there could have been a few flowers that I wanted to use here, but I decided to go with all pretty much the same. I'm going to pop my little stems in here. I am going to cut these down a little bit. I was just measuring roughly how long I needed, and I actually only needed them to be about half as big as they were. I'm adding some foam tape just to the sides and bottom. I'm going to leave that top open because that's where I'm going to pop in the stems, remember. Adding a little bit of foam in all the good places, and then I will pop this up to give it that little bit of dimension. As I mentioned earlier, you could have done lots of things to give this a glossy look as well. It kind of already looks like that because of the white highlights, but I still think we could take this further, and that would be really fun. So I'm sure that will be coming in an upcoming video. Now, as I said, this card was just combining my 2 favorites at the moment, and this is what I enjoy most about card making, when I find something that I absolutely love and I can kind of just use it in all the different ways. So let me know, what are your favorite stents? Do you have a kind of go-to that just makes you really happy, that you find all the ways to use it, like a stamp set or a die set or a stencil perhaps? What is your go-to when it comes to you just really enjoy creating with that thing? Now I'm going to layer these up. The blue flower here is going to be popped up on some foam tape, and the other 2 are going to be flat. And then it's going to finish up my sweet and simple card today. I tell you, I had a smile on my face. I enjoyed creating this. I hope you've enjoyed watching it. As per usual, these supplies will be listed in the description box below this video, as well as the Buy Me a Coffee link in case you want to help out my channel and support all of these videos I put out every second day, every other day for you all. Thank you so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next video. Thanks.